Okay, please continue.
I think there were, I think maybe you were next, and we'll go here.
Now, Boy Scouts are like a screen park.
Huh?
We dress boys up like anything, and their fathers, they go out on the camping, but they have a kind of a real experience. Maybe the boy sprains his ankle, his father has to fix it, and so there's a theme park that actually has a social, past generations, redeeming value.
Yeah, and this is a great, it goes back to I think our first question about parenting, and I mentioned this in the book Theme Park, that you know, theme park or theming gets used as a metaphor, and so you could say, you know, sometimes we describe foreign policy, or you know, I heard the occupation of Iraq described as a theme park. Likewise, you could say, you know, Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, that the way that people play roles, that they dress up, that there's symbolism, those are all characteristics of theming. Theming basically is using symbols, using key metaphors or analogies or places or spaces or symbols to recreate an experience or create an experience.
Not just only for narcissism or whatever, but
no,
also for real,
for meaningful. Oh yeah, yeah. And if you read my stuff, in fact, over the years, because I've worked in a theme park and I've again done consulting, over the years I've become less hard-nosed about just saying theme parks are inauthentic, because again, if your thing is going to theme parks, or your thing is watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, or you know, reading pulp novels, Twilight, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's authentic for you, and maybe you could have an authentic experience that's mediated by the Boy Scouts, by Disneyland, by the Twilight series. So I guess I would say, as an anthropologist who is trying to get inside the head of the person who experiences something as authentic, that would be an okay or a sufficient answer for me, or circumstance. Now, for some philosophers maybe, or critics who are thinking of more of the global issue of authenticity, I could see that as being a problem. For media theorists, for political theorists, I have concerns myself with the idea that we could use, you know, a cemetery, or use some statement on the news, or some product ad to buy some product, to condition the self in such a way that people aren't concerned about values of community, or values, as Charles Taylor talks about, those things greater than yourself. That concerns me, because I could see us getting off track as a society where all we do is the narcissism, the consumerism, and so forth. So maybe Boy Scouts and those kind of clubs are good models for saying you could do some of this, you could have symbols, you could have theming, and you could do it in a way that's authentic for those individuals. What's that?
Church services.
Oh, church services, sure. Oh yeah, certainly, yeah. Yeah, in fact, some of the folks I've met at my theming conferences work. They work for a televangelist, and they do theming for churches. So the sky's the limit in terms of the kind of spaces that are being themed or thought of as theme spaces. So, great question.
Authenticity as it relates to age. I mean, child going to Disneyland is going to be
Right. Well, that's something that comes up with, and I talk a little bit about this in the new book, demographics. And so if you're targeting, you know, this demographic age range, kids, teenagers, middle adult, later adult, yeah, you're going to have different maybe metaphors or memories that you try to evoke, conditions in the experiences. And it's one challenge, I believe, in some of these spaces where, like in a lot of Vegas casinos, where it's not age specific, or it's maybe just for adults, and that could present problems for families traveling there, or kids, or even teenagers who want to experience something. It's something that communities like Lake Tahoe struggle with as well, trying to find their identity as a community. And even nature itself, as many theorists have pointed out, is a theme space. It's constructed. You know, you can't say there's an authentic national park out there, because that park is not the same as it used to be. It's not the essence of what was in nature. Part of it is, perhaps. So, you know, everything out there that is being dealt with, say, in a lot of these nature communities like Lake Tahoe, often relates back to this idea of what can it provide for each and every person, regardless of their demographics, their culture, their background, their religion, their politics. It's probably one of the greatest challenges that people experience as designers in theme spaces, because the easy way out is to make it very broad and a-specific, but then you're not going to tap into the evocative stuff. It'd be like taking Dickens and taking out all the incredible details, what we call hypotyposis, the vivid details that authors create. If you took all those out, it wouldn't be Dickens. It wouldn't be evocative. You couldn't suspend your disbelief. So it's a challenge for designers, because it's very difficult maybe to make something that's either too specific or too general, to try to hit those niches that you're talking about, whether it's age or other demographics. Who was next? A lot of hands. Someone shout out.
One of the concerns that I have about theming of a lot of things is
is twofold. One is it oversimplifies reality, and two, it diminishes the imagination. That is, frequently the themes try to fill in the imagination so there's nothing left. That is,
Right.
they provide all the details, and you cease to think. It's like a passive observer of television. And the simplification is just rampant in theme. The Dickens was one example of that. I don't have a problem with escaping once in a while. When people start living their lives through the kind of simplified, lack of imaginative world of theme parks, it concerns me.
Right,
I think
right.
It is a kind of lobotomizing
Sure,
experience.
There are some of them in Marin, they're Ren Fair addicts.
Oh,
They
sure,
go into an altered state, and they're going to an altered time.
Live theming,
and Renaissance Fair becomes their religion, and they take it very seriously.
It reminds me a little bit of the analogy that Borges, the writer, made in one of his works on, I think, on exactitude in science, I think it was called. And his analogy is that, you know, a cartographer who made a map that had a one-to-one scale of the world, right? And of course, the joke is that the map would be the same size as the Earth, you know? And that's, I talk about this in the latest book, the idea of simplification, and that's the real challenge, to say, if I have to simplify reality to these key points, can I do it in such a way that it addresses some of your points? I did a consulting thing years ago for a theme park company, and I brought this up. They sort of jumped to, they said, we want to have these giant creatures in this theme space. And I said, as the anthropologist, well, what about the ecology? And from an evolutionary standpoint, how do these giant creatures come to evolve over time? And it seemed like it was like they wanted to just, maybe as you would say, simplify too much and jump the gun just to have the gusto moment, which is the giant creatures that the kids would find to be interesting and so forth. So yeah, I think it's a real concern. I guess the other side of me would say, well, every art form is doing that as well. If you look at any great painter or composer, there's a translation, a representation, a simplification, and so it's really about the politics of representation. I do agree with you on the creativity side too. I think if you stifle creativity in one of these spaces, then that's going to be a problem. Now, I guess I would say in some museums, some of these museum experiences, they leave things open. It's more what Umberto Eco would call a readerly text, which is the text I can get into and experience on my own right as a reader, as opposed to a writerly text, which is pre-designed for me by the theme park designers. So if we can achieve a readerly experience in some of these spaces, that might be more evocative as far as doing what you're talking about with the imagination. It's a great, all these questions are great and hard, so yeah.
Well, this isn't a hard
Oh, good. Easy one.
And I'm speaking to the other side. I love my Barbie doll. And my sisters.
Okay.
And all of us, we all became best friends.
Nice, yeah.
Also, I love theme space. I love Disneyland. I love Universal Studios. I know what I'm doing when I go there. I know that most of my intellectual friends criticize me for it and say, oh, waste of time, this, that. But when I walk in there, I know what I'm doing. I am entranced. And I find it fun. I don't take it seriously. That's why I go. My rest of my life is very serious.
Right.
So when I go in there, I'm relieved.
Right.
And so I did want to say there is that other point for some of us, that we can actually enjoy them. And I'm not saying that I enjoy the politics of the corporations. I know the book that you got on Disney, Eating the World.
Yeah.
Things, but I just want to interject that for me it's been a very pleasant experience. Yeah.
And that's excellent counterpoint, because again, it's something that your thing might be Disneyland, my thing might be romance novels, and I guess we might look at maybe the bigger picture, and it just reminds me of the conversation I had with John about this a week or so ago. Maybe there's a way to envision that you could do all these things. So you could be the politically engaged feminist, you could have the Barbie doll, you could go to Disneyland and still not be duped by consumerism. You could be all those things at once, and that is your sense of authenticity.
Well, it depends how the parent presents it.
Sure.
If a parent takes a child to this Christian place, and
the Holy Land experience,
where they have dinosaurs and people living together.
Oh, the one in Kentucky, sure, yeah.
Right. Make the child think this is real.
Yeah.
That's different than just going and saying this is a
Boy, that's it's tricky. Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Yeah.
Like everything with parents and children.
Yeah.
Children can go into a polluted world, but the parents can give them a frame of reference.
Reference, yeah, and that's again part of probably, again, I don't have to worry about this, thankfully, but that's part of maybe effective parenting is to have these conversations and to think about the self and to, I mean, with all the issues, say, with kids and suicide and image and the internet and social pressures, I think these discussions have to be had with kids. If you read Ken Gergen, the psychologist's book, The Saturated Self, his concern is that we are so saturated as individuals, any sense of the organic self he feels is lost, and in its place you have saturation. And so if that's true, then psychologists and parents and school counselors and teachers and social workers really need to engage with a sense of self and a sense of the world that is quite different than whether it existed in this organic form or not in the past. If that's the model, maybe we have to change the model a bit.
Teachers to the classroom.
Absolutely. I would say so. Great question. Was it Janiko next, or?
Scott, there's one example that you discussed in your presentation about a sort of simulated experience that can still be an authentic experience. Are reality TV programs.
Oh, yeah.
And the one I'm thinking of in particular was one of the earliest forms of it. I still think probably the best and most authentic example of one was the PBS series. There was a 1900 house, there was a 1941 house.
Oh, yeah.
Where they had people living in historically accurate living situations that were appropriate to that particular period. And so they were living in an isolated area only with the kind of technology that they had at that time. And they were often, sometimes they were single, sometimes they were childless couples, sometimes they were married couples with children. The whole family would come and they would live together as a community. And I'm thinking of, one inauthentic experience. Within that experience was the man who was found to be cheating, and he actually found things off-site, away from the television cameras, and found a coil mattress and snuck it into his, circa 1865 house.
Right.
And they docked him for that. So
Wow.
you can't win the competition because you were cheating here. And his response, he was very angry. He said, "I would have done anything that it would have taken to allow my family to survive."
Wow.
They didn't have coil mattresses back there, so I don't know what. But the other, there was another couple, however, in 1941 house, which I thought was a very authentic experience in this very sort of artificial circumstance, and it took place in London. This was filmed in England, so it was London, and it was supposed to be 1941 or 1942 during the intense bombings. And so in the middle of the night, this family, they're there with their children. They awaken to an air raid siren, and they're groggy with sleep, and they know they have to get down into the bomb shelter, into the basement. The mother panics, grabs her children, they run downstairs. She leaves the kitchen door open with the light. Of course, would be a no-no in World War II England, because you're telling the bombers where the homes are with your lighting. So she ignored the blackout. Well, she panicked. She forgot. And so then later on, when she was confronted by one of the moderators who said, "Look, you violated a really important rule here. You didn't turn out the light. You didn't use the blackout curtain." And she was so distraught and filled with emotion. She said, "My children's lives were in danger. What did you expect?" And her visceral reaction was as if this was something really happening. She was responding with a terror mechanism, a panic mechanism, and the fact that she's being followed around by television cameras, and that this is a completely simulated thing, and that she's not living in 1941, was for that moment really and genuinely lost to her. And it reminded me of the Milgram experience. Experience at Stanford, right, where people forget that they're in an experiment, and they really are feeling these emotions. They really are making these ethical and unethical choices in this world that now seems very real. But it's not. It's a simulation.
And I think, is that?
I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to take it.
Okay, all right. Moderator's privilege,
Well, moderator. Thanks. You used the word meme a few times. Would you define your definition of what that is?
Sure.
And could you give us a couple of examples of how theme parks have meme society?
Sure. Yeah, memes, it's a term that comes from Richard Dawkins' book, The Selfish Gene. And a meme, basically, simplest definition, is a unit of information or a unit of meaning. And it's recognizable to people. So if I said, can you hum, you know, how Beethoven's Fifth Symphony starts? Right, that's a meme. So, so memes in theme parks could be everything from, you know, Mickey Mouse ears to the way a particular landscape is constructed, a certain experience that people remember. And if you look on fan web pages about theme parks, you know, there are people that are quite upset that the experiences of, say, Mr. Toad's Ride or rides that have been closed or rethemed or whatever, you see how serious memes or experiences can be to people, aficionados of theme parks, because they are so upset they end up writing, you know, the company and expressing their dismay that, you know, that this memory has been taken from them, or not the memory, the experience that created the memory. So memes I write about in the latest book are important for designers because they're part of that process, what we discussed, the controversial process of often simplifying things or drawing on experiences that we believe most people will have and maybe using those. Museums use these. If you go to the museum, the Holocaust museums in DC and Los Angeles, you certainly see how life experience becomes a meme, and a powerful one, and one very different than the memes that are used to sell products in Disneyland. And so it's a different use of, I would say, evocation. You're evoking a spirit, a sensibility, kind of like what Junico talked about with these home shows. If you believe that by hearing, if you call that a meme, that air raid siren, which was very iconic for people in the UK during the Blitz, then that's going to maybe cause a change of state in use psychologically or even existentially, you could say.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a meme.
Okay, let's give him another round.
Thank you. It was fun.